chairs here, guys. You like? All right. Welcome, everyone. Welcome for those watching us here on the internet. It's a pleasure to have all of you here in this sunny day. Our short summer, but very nice. So today, Tiago, we're going to talk about the silent hand of charity. But before that, we're going to have Fabio doing our initial reading and prayer. Thank you, Fabio.
I'm going to read a paragraph from Jesus in the Home, from Chico Xavier by the Spirit. We can hand out bread and blankets. We can light the lamp of ignorance, and we can strengthen the fraternity by wiping out discord. But let's not ignore the daily, methodical, and serene battle against evil. Convinced that, in this holy struggle, we will win the divine crown of secret charity. Dear Lord, Master Jesus, and all the spirits to help us here every day with their tasks. May them help us to enlighten us, to elevate our thoughts, and to purify our hearts, to open its doors for the learnings that Tiago will share with us today. Let's open our minds for his teachings, the teachings that came from Jesus, for all of us. Let us enjoy this presentation today, and that may help us to give all this to others, to bring it with us wherever we go. So be it.
All right, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Let me just quickly do a little test here. It's not going. There may be no look. Well, we will do it. We will do it. Here we are today, and I would say once more to speak about charity. And I think many of us, if we are studying or dedicating ourselves to Spiritism, we heard this word several times, didn't we?
Yeah.
Right? There are phrases all over the internet, right? Beautiful little images like that I decided to use too because it looks good. I always do this little classic images on the slideshow. Decided to go a little more modern. And charity is something always being talked about. And why that? Right? It is curious that so much we talk about it. And I will confess, sometimes we tend to say that because we are here, we hear a lot, and it's good to talk about. But do we really know what that means? That is the number one. And always I have an interest to go back to the basics, to try to understand what we are talking about until we get to the meaning of this title. And the meaning of the title, as we understand a little more what charity is, will make more sense. So, of course, that charity is something that is all around the gospel. Jesus spoke about charity at length. Many of the apostles spoke about charity at length. And the Spiritism takes that and brings us to a different level of understanding of what charity is. In many ways, charity is mixed up with love. And we will understand a little bit why. One of the reasons is because we translate things in unique ways. love and charity are in many ways intertwined, but we can make a distinction on that as well. We understand by what the Spiritism brings to us in terms of what charity means for us as Spiritists. Number one, you will sum up all the teachings of Christianity in this specific word. And it is an essential quality for our development. Let's leave it very clear. And we are still trying to grasp its real meaning. And that is the main reason why we don't stop talking about charity. Every single time that there is a thing that comes back recurrently, we understand that because we still didn't get it. And that is the proof. If I thought that I got it, and I continue reading the Spiritism, and charity keeps coming back, and messages from good spirits keep coming back with this word, right, that you are absolutely right. It's because we still didn't get it. That's right. Thank you for reminding me. It is because we still need to give more steps toward deeper and deeper understanding. Not only that, we are still about to understand the real meaning of how to be charitable. We know a lot about the materiality of charity, which is part of it, but not the whole thing. We understand, even for those who come from Brazil, and it is inevitable to mention that, it is very common, and here as well, if we are doing charity, if we have a charity that we donate to, usually, what does that represent? Funds, some money, right? Sometimes we donate some material goods, which is important. It is part of charity, but it's not the whole thing. Doing that is also charity, but it is not charity as a whole, right? And I had a teacher, and she was a teacher in a Spiritist center there in my hometown. Her name is Terezinha Oliveira. She discarnated already. And she wrote several books. Most of them were educational books in Spiritism. And she was the one that, for the first time, gave one specific sentence that did stick with me. That means that charity is love in action. And it's still with me until today. And maybe in doing what we are doing here, we may try to grasp a little more as well the meaning of this expression. Charity is love in action. Let's see how well or not we go. Thank you. So, of course, that if we are speaking about something in Spiritism, it is because Jesus started. He already did to us the kickstart of talking about the charity and its real meanings. One of the most revealing passages about charity is in the Beatitudes. If you don't know the Beatitudes, Matthew 5 onwards, the Sermon of the Mount. On the Mount, sorry. Jesus gives us a series of instructions and consoling messages that will encompass all his teachings. So charity is there, built in the Sermon on the Mount. And when Jesus says, beware of practicing righteousness before other people, in front of them, in order to be seen by them, for then you will not have any reward from your Father who is in heaven. So then let's stop right here. When Jesus says that, don't do the good that you can do in order to get anything in return. Don't let anybody see what you are doing. Does that mean that everything that we do, we need to be hidden to do? No, it would not make sense. The good that we do is to be, at least the result, is to have a practical application, is to be seen in a way. But we will understand that what Jesus is talking about here is not about the act in itself. Jesus is talking about what do we want from the good that we do. Jesus points out the responsibility of the meaning of this charity, not about the actions themselves, but he helps us to look to ourselves to understand our real motivations, our real intentions. Why do we do the good that we do? What do we want with that? Because it was very common back in the time, if we put in context, that was very common, and we have passages in the gospel of priests, nothing to do with religion, but then with the figures that were there in the gospel. Many important people that would go in front in the churches and the synagogues back in the time, because they were Jewish, they would go to the synagogues and pray out loud. They would try to show to everybody that they followed the rules of the time, the religious and the moral rules that they had to obey. They were observing the practices of the laws that they followed, but they needed to do this in front of everyone. They needed to be shown. They needed to show to people what they were doing. So then others would tell them, oh, look at this. This person is really a good person. This person really does something good. And they would go there and give the money for the church and give the money, their donation, in front of everybody on purpose, so then everybody would see. What Jesus would say is, if you are going to give to the needy, do not let others see. Sound no trumpet before you, as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and the streets. Jesus is not calling people hypocrites necessarily, but he needed to be very pungent when he spoke with certain people back in that time. Remember that. Please, let's not start talking with people like that. Let's not call anybody hypocrites. After all, many times we do many things that are in essence hypocritical because we think that we're doing something good. Because Jesus would say, they may be praised by others, but not by God. So he would continue, I say to you, they receive their reward. If my intention is to be seen by you and receive praise from you, from what I am doing, okay, I got it. But what does that mean for my spiritual advancement? Not necessarily will do any good. However, when you give to the needy, do not let your left hand see what your right hand is doing, so that your giving may be in secret, and your Father who sees in secret will reward you. Now, if we are to understand that from the point of view that is deeper, that other level that we are trying to understand things, that the Spiritism helps us, what would then represent that idea of the left hand and the right hand? The left hand would be exactly the hand of the materiality. The hand that represents the motivations, that I'm doing good because I want to be seen by others, just like me. The left hand, it is the loud hand of the material life. It is the loud hand of my pride, of my interest to feel good by showing off to others so then I can feel superior to somebody that I'm giving something to. Because when I'm giving something to somebody, well, clearly I have more than them. If they need and I can give, I will feel good about it. But what Jesus is saying, there is the right hand which is the hand of the good that we do for the sake of doing good. That is the good that we do that doesn't need to have necessarily any consequence for us here in the existence that we are living today. In fact, the right hand, it is a duty imposed by God. So then we put in action the qualities that God gave to us as a seed to be developed by us through our actions. The good that I do, it is a duty. The good that I do is a responsibility that I have as a spirit. It is not a privilege that I have because I have something extra to spare to give to anybody else. The right hand means absolutely nothing in terms of what I do to others, but it means something that I am doing to myself so then I can communicate with God. And in that communication, I'm telling God, I am listening to your call so then I can fulfill my duty that you gave me on this earth, that Jesus translated perfectly. Love one another. This is not a privilege. This is a duty. Therefore, if we are to place a little more understanding on the meaning of charity, the number one is charity is a duty that God gave us to fulfill. So, whatever is the material expression of that charity, if there is that sense of duty built in, chances are we are not going to need to show it off. Because we will understand that the real reward that we are getting, it is to continue having the opportunity to do the good that God wants us to do. That's why we say, do good for the sake of doing good. Do good because you will be better after doing that. If I have a problem in my hand and I learn how to solve, what happens with me? I have two more to solve. Right? If my boss gives me one task and I meet the task, he gives me two more. When I do those two, he gives me four more. God, every single time we do something good, God will say, okay, now I will give you more. And if I do good, and God sees it, God will give me more opportunity to do good. Because He sees, she sees, that I am practicing that seed of goodness that He planted in us in order for us to act. Okay, what would the Spiritism then tell us from, going back to the basis, from the basics that the Spiritism, that I say the basic codification that Allan Kardec brought to us? When Jesus says that you shall love your neighbor as yourself, Jesus is bringing all His teachings condensed in that expression. He sums up all the laws that were brought to mankind, to humankind, in one expression. He condensed all the laws and the teachings of the prophets that came before him in basically two laws. One is love God, and the other is love your neighbor. So then charity is right there. Because charity is not only speaking about loving others and doing anything for others, but also as yourself. Every single time that we speak about charity, and when we speak about a duty, we speak about something that, number one, we need to put in practice in ourselves. In ourselves. Allan Kardec will ask in the Spirit's book, the part 3, the chapter 11. The part 3 is the moral laws. It is one of the most important parts of the Spirit's book, and it is actually one of the most important teachings of Spiritism. It is when they teach us, the Spirits teach us about the moral laws or the natural laws. If the first revelation that we call, which is the revelation that came through Moses, he brings what? The Ten Commandments. A set of laws that help the people in that time to walk towards their spirituality, their spiritual advancement. When Jesus comes, Jesus condenses those laws, plus all the 613 that Moses writes to people, in 2. Love your God with all your heart and love your neighbor as yourself. And the Spiritism comes to us and presents us with what they call the moral or natural laws. And if you go to the part 3 of the Spirit's book, they're all there. And in the chapter 11, they explain about the law of justice, love, and charity. And in the question 886, Allan Kardec will ask the Spirits, what is the true meaning of the word charity as Jesus understood? So then we have the opportunity now to understand from the source what charity would mean. And of course, the Spirits will give something that is food for thought for us, that will make us study and dedicate ourselves and do a lot of homework, because they give us 3 words. The first word is benevolence towards everyone. And the second one is indulgence with the imperfections of others. And the third one is forgiveness. Forgiveness for offenses. So, that question answered gives us more study and more understanding and a couple of steps forward. So let's try to break that down. Because Allan Kardec would say that this sums up what charity really is. And Allan Kardec gives a little more, he develops a little bit then. He would say that loving our neighbors is to do them all good possible. All we would wish to be done to ourselves, to be done to others. So the charity here is, no matter what I receive, no matter what I get, but if I wish that, I will give. There are some religious figures in our time that would say, and I'm really sorry because I don't have this source, it just came back to my head now. I'm really sorry. So, may have been Mother Teresa, that she said, every time if I am hungry, she is actually doing a prayer. Every time that I'm hungry, give me the chance to feed somebody. Everything that I'm cold, give me the opportunity to clothe somebody. Every time that I'm lonely, give me the opportunity to be a presence for somebody. So, I'm sorry I don't have this source, but I believe that it makes a lot of sense here for us when we understand that the meaning of the charity, it is a duty to our neighbors. And who is our neighbor? Spiritism teaches us we have one God. So we are all sons and daughters of the same God. The planet is what? Our home today. Therefore, we are all neighbors. We all live in the same neighborhood, the solar system. We all live close by. So our most close neighbors are ourselves, the earthlings. We are all neighbors. So what Jesus is saying is, practice a universal fraternity, a universal love. Make no distinction for the good that we do. Make no distinction who for. And that becomes a little more challenging, because you're going to say, come on, everybody. Somebody just hit my car yesterday. You're asking for a little much. You know, I don't know, some kid just pulled the hair of my kid in school. I need to love them, do good. Guess what? Yeah, that's right. That's right. But what about this very serious hurt that somebody does to me? And that's when the silent charity comes into play. Do I need to tell anybody that I forgive them? Because chances are, if I say something, if I have the need to tell somebody, chances are I need them to hear. Therefore, I need them to understand, and I need them to get to know that I don't hold a grudge against them. Therefore, what am I asking here? For some sort of response or recognition of what I am doing. So let's go to the definition, and we're going to get this better. Another beautiful image for us. Benevolence. Benevolence, if we go to the dictionary, remember the three words. Let me go back. Benevolence. It is kindness. It is goodness. Goodwill. Altruism. Humanity. When we talk about love your enemy, we are talking about do the good that you wanted somebody to do to you. It is about not turning bad with bad. It is responding to hurt without being with hurt as well. It is giving something without wanting anything. It could be that benevolence has nothing to do with materiality. It can be simply time that you give to someone. It can be a smile that you give to somebody that can in that moment change their lives, at least for that day. It is what we give, that we have to give, that God gave us. God gave us the time. God gave us the ability to smile. God gave our intelligence to help somebody to solve a problem. God gave us the ability to have compassion, so then we can offer a little bit of consolation for whoever is in need. That is the benevolence. And it is to be done with everybody. And that's why Jesus says, love your enemy. Because it is about everybody. Who is my enemy after all? Who is my enemy? Remember, we are immortal. We are incarnating over and over and over with our enemies inside our own house. We are waking up with them, having breakfast with them, driving them to work, to school, being driven by them, being fed by them. This is my enemy. And if today this enemy is far, chances are tomorrow they will be very close. And if today they are close, it means that tomorrow they will not be enemies anymore. Therefore, every single time that I refuse to practice something in terms of an intention to somebody that hurt me, I'm also being my enemy. But Jesus never asked for perfection. But Jesus gave us the path. Jesus gave us the instruction. And Jesus gave us the opportunity to do it over and over and over. And God gave us the blessing of forgetting our enemies, so then we can love them. So when Jesus says love your enemies, He's not talking about necessarily doing good for somebody that unfortunately committed a heinous crime against somebody close to me. He's talking about practice the love to anybody, because chances are who is closer to you is the one that hurt you most, and who is closer to you is the one that you hurt most. You may be someone else's enemy too, and they are practicing loving you. And the other aspect of charity, it is indulgence. And there are at least two different descriptions and definitions of indulgence. Indulgence is not to have another cookie after dinner or something like that. It's not to have the extra scoop of ice cream. No, that's not it. Even though this is good too. Maybe that's why they put those two definitions together, because they do good to us. Having an extra scoop of ice cream do good. It does good to us. But when we overlook somebody's failure, when we bother less about pointing out something wrong that somebody did to us, that is the indulgence. When we, instead of pointing out the imperfection that someone has, which basically hurts them already probably, and we don't need to point that out because it already hurts. You be sure. We know how it hurts when we discover that we're not perfect. So we don't need to point that out. That is the indulgence. This is sweeter than ice cream. Because when we make a choice to silence, instead of pointing it out, we are using charity as the cherry on top of the ice cream. It is not criticizing somebody, right, when they do something bad. That is charity. And of course, the last one is the forgiveness. Now, among the definitions of forgiveness, one of the ones that struck me most was that forgiveness, not being forgetting, not being moving on, not being letting go, not being any of it. It is a conscious, it is a deliberate choice that we make to treat somebody who hurt us with the utmost dignity, human dignity, that any human deserves. Even though I have the right to be hurt, even though I have the right to say, you hurt me, my deliberate choice is to continue treating this person with the most human dignity that I deserve. If somebody hurt me, the forgiveness will not make our hurt disappear. It will not make me immediately hurt less. Somebody says, I don't think I forgave because it still hurts. We don't know. Put that aside. There's something else going on. What is the choice that you are making about how to treat this person? Well, I didn't want to talk to them anymore, so then I think I didn't forgive. No, that is something else as well. You don't need to expose yourself to hurt constantly. If somebody hurts you, you have the right to defend yourself. But even though you may have the human right to seek for justice, you make a choice to treat them with dignity. That is charity. That changes the meaning of what we do to ourselves and to others. One of the most interesting passages of those stories that Francisco Cândido Xavier, and for those who study Spiritism know, the medium and the charitable man, and a person that practiced daily, he practiced charity. And there is one story that, in my opinion, represents a lot of what forgiveness is. That somebody goes to the Spiritist center where Chico Xavier used to attend people and help people. And this person comes very abruptly, very aggressively, and demands to have a pass, demands to have help. And she slaps him in the face. Well, I don't think that is difficult to think that if somebody comes to you demanding something, slapping you in the face, chances are, at minimum, I don't think that whatever demand that they were giving to me, that's not gonna happen. Probably. We're gonna need to talk about something else. It's not that you're gonna give back the slap, but probably whatever they are asking, I don't think I'm gonna have the stomach to just give simply, right? Well, he felt that, he was not going to do it. He was not going to help that person. And for those who know, Chico Xavier had his mentor, Emmanuel, who was constantly with him. And together, they were working towards fulfilling his mission of charity. So Emmanuel says, go and help her. And he said, but she just slapped me in the face. Yeah, I know, she did. But you're going to do what she's asking. But I have the right. And Emmanuel says something very interesting. He says, you have the right, but she has the need. So the choice is treating somebody with the utmost dignity that they need to receive. Even though I have the right even not to do it because I am hurt. Nothing wrong is going to happen with me if I decide, no, sorry, I'm not going to do it. That's my choice. That's not going to give me any immediate negative consequence. But the charity is, I will. Because in that moment, that is not my need. That moment is somebody else's. So if we put together benevolence, indulgence, forgiveness, now we start to understanding in a deeper level the meaning of charity as Jesus understood and taught us. Saint Vincent of Paul is a spirit that has active participation in the gospel according to Spiritism. He answers several messages, several questions in the Spirit's book and the Gospel according to Spiritism, in fact. This specific passage, when he says that charity is the fundamental virtue that must uphold the entire edifice of earthly virtues. Without charity, none of the other ones exist. Shows the importance that charity has in our lives. It is interesting because Allan Kardec, after the answer of the spirits, Allan Kardec is not totally satisfied. And he continues asking the spirits. And if you jump one question, you go to the question 888. He asks about that material charity that we are talking about. What about giving alms? Giving something material. And St. Vincent of Paul would say, the alms giving is not condemnable. What is condemnable is the way which is done. That's what is important, that we need to take notice of. It is the way that is done. It is about my intention. It is about my motivation. It is about what objective I have in giving that. He said, true charity is always good and benevolent. It is demonstrated both in the act itself and the way that is done. Also, he says, remember that in God's sight, ostentation erases the merit of benevolence. Jesus said, don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. Therein he teaches you not to tarnish charity with pride. And then he sums up. And we know that in the gospel according to Spiritism, and we will get there, we know that pride and selfishness are the greatest enemies of our evolution. Therefore, the spirits will tell us that charity, and then there is another nice word that is many times misunderstood, but the humbleness, and in some translations it is humility. It is there to help us. So, Allan Kardec, in the Spiritist magazine, in December of 1868, the Spiritist magazine is a golden material. It is the magazine that Allan Kardec ran throughout his entire mission that he had to codify the Spiritism until the date of his death, his discarnation, and others continue. There is so much material, and I really invite you all, if you have the opportunity, to read and to study and to reflect on the teachings of the Spiritist magazine. There is a passage that is called "Charity is the soul of the Spiritism." It is very interesting because he says that charity would sum all the duties of humans to themselves and to others. And he would say even more, there is no true Spiritism without charity. So that's why there is so much being talked and taught about charity. There are two dimensions, right? The material dimension and the moral dimension. And he's talking about the benevolent charity. He calls the material one the beneficent charity, and the moral one the benevolent charity. And the benevolent one will be love your neighbor. Renounce rage. Renounce animosity, resentment, jealousy, vengeance, and all ill intentions towards everyone. And I like that passage here because he didn't say renounce anger, did he? No. Because just remember one thing, we were born with the ability to feel anger. We just don't know how to use it. So then we are not to suppress the anger, but we are to suppress the uncontrolled expression of anger. But anger belongs to all of us, not the rage, not the vengeance, and not the ill intentions. Forgive your enemy, pay back evil with good. Silence before one's imperfections. Do not judge. Forgive one's faults. Do not gossip. That one hurts. Do not gossip. Don't give in to the habit of speaking badly about people. And that has a very interesting component. The charity that we are talking about, if we are speaking about being immortal spirits, remember, we are in constant communication not only with the material world, but we are in constant communication with the spiritual world as well. Can charity be done between the two planes of existence? Between the two realms? Of course it can. So then if I am with my thoughts attracting malevolent spirits, if I'm holding resentment against somebody, what would that allow? The presence of spirits that are connected with my resentment and the possibility of spirits to prey on my vulnerability and the vulnerability of those who are receiving my thoughts. So my charity as well means, am I giving in to feelings that are going to feed imperfect, suffering, and vengeful spirits that are surrounding us constantly, waiting for a moment to prey on our own imperfections? And that's another dimension of the charity being something that belongs to us. I'm not doing good to anybody before I'm doing good to me. Doing good to others is a consequence of the good that I do to myself. The good that I do to others is a natural consequence of the good that I do. Charity is practical. It is something that can be tangible. Silent but tangible. We know how we feel when the good is done. We know how it feels when we do good. Our minds, our heart, our body tells us. We know how we feel. And finally, in the Gospel according to Spiritism, there is one chapter called "Without Charity, There is No Salvation." If we understand now a little more what charity is, what about that salvation thing? Are we lost? No. Half. We've been trying. We've been making mistakes. We've been striving to be better. But the salvation that Jesus presents to us, it is the freedom from those imperfections. We will be saved not by anybody else, but by ourselves. We will liberate ourselves from the ties of that detrimental materiality, from the excessive dependency of people and things to be happy. If I deposit my happiness in having so many people around me, when they are gone, what is of me then? The Spirit, Umberto de Campos, has a very powerful message that is called A Preparation to Death. And about the family ties, he tells us, love, but in moderation. But that is the kind of love that he's talking about. That is the love, that the familial and the blood ties, that is stronger than the universal love of the fraternity that we need to have for all of us. Because remember, the roles that we play to each other's lives today is temporary. But the roles that we play in each other's lives as a humanity, that is permanent. Therefore, I'm not doing bad to somebody in order to defend my blood family. I'm doing good to everybody. That is the point. That is the salvation. It is to liberate ourselves from the earthly laws of justice that somehow defend death, that defends vengeance, that defends that the others suffer for what they did. But the Spiritism would say that justice has no value without the charity. That's why The chapter 11 in the Spirit's book says the law of justice, love, and charity. They are together. They cannot be separated. Justice without charity is tyrannic potentially. Justice with charity is education for the spirit. It is a process of re-education of our tendencies, of our instincts, of our impulses, in order for us to be better. And to be better to us and to be better to others. So, if we are just to condense and to try to organize those thoughts with us, with those moments that we have here together, to try to give ourselves a little better understanding on charity, given by the spirits themselves and by Jesus. The charity will sum up all human virtues. Because even in the chapter 6 of the book of Matthew, when Jesus says, don't let your left hand do what right hand does, he also says, love your enemy. He also says, judge not to be judged. He also says, when you are going to pray, don't pray loudly like the hypocrites in the synagogues, but go to your room, close your door, and pray in silence. So then God will hear you in silence. Of course that you don't need to go to your room and close the door to pray. But he's talking about that silent place that is our conscience. That silent place that we can go to every minute of our lives. That is that place where it's only between God and ourselves. And that conversation can happen without interruption or interference. And that is the moment when we talk about, how am I doing? Am I fulfilling God's purpose for me? Remember, it complements the law of justice. And it is an imperative for evolution. It is an imperative for evolution. Because it is not coming from anybody else. It is not coming from any fellow human that is in the same level as we are. It is coming from God. Remember, two types, material and moral. Both of them can work together, people. Can work together. There. Saturday, August 24. That is one of the ways that we can practice charity. And when you go there, just remember the intention that you have by going there, for instance. What do you want with that? What do you want to give besides blood? Or what do you want to receive besides the snack after? Right? The moral charities, it is the donation of the moral qualities that we have. It is the donation of the virtues that God gave to us to develop. It is the forgiveness of everybody. And it is ultimately the sacrifice of our own lives. By what? Sometimes we need to sacrifice our tranquility. We need to sacrifice some of our possessions. We need to sacrifice our sleep. Sometimes sacrifice moving from one place to another for the benefit of others. In the most sublime, divine example of charity is from Jesus himself. Because having the opportunity to save himself, having the opportunity to be superior to anybody on earth in the time that he was among us, he decides to be crucified together with two thieves he looks at the guards that took his clothes, and they were playing to decide which piece of clothes would be to each one, who were screaming and shouting at him while he was on the cross. Every single possible word imaginable or not imaginable, with all the torture that they were perpetrating against not only Jesus but so many others. He looks up and he says, Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing. And I believe that we have the opportunity to get to know what we are doing. To make a deliberate, conscious choice of what we do to ourselves and what we do to our lives and to the lives of everybody around us. So then we will fulfill the purpose that God has for us. And we would finally listen to Jesus when Jesus tells us, love one another just like I have loved you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Tiago. We do have time for a few questions or comments if there's anyone on the internet as well. We have Lou in the back for your questions and comments. Anyone? All right. So thank you very much again, Tiago. We're going to get prepared for the fast. For those watching us through the internet, I invite you to do your own final prayer at home.